So you're building up a practice in the mid-70s, and at some point, the IAES becomes developed in 79, I think. Tell me about the early origins of the AAES, and the first meeting was in 1980. What do you recall about
I think it was a little earlier than that. I think it was in the late 70s. We were at the first IAES meeting. There was Norman Thompson, Orlo Clark, myself, Ed Kaplan was there, and we were sitting at the IAES, I think it was the American Thyroid meeting. We were sitting at the American Thyroid meeting, and we felt that we didn't have a voice, that we were surgeons and they were the ones that had control of the meeting. They had all the scientific papers, very little things about surgery, and that we played a very small part. We had lunch that afternoon, and we said we had to have our own society, and about at that time the IAES had already started, and so we said, well, this will be an offshoot, will be the American Association of Endocrine Surgeons. And Norman Thompson was clearly the leader, and he said, we need to get this thing off the ground, and we ought to start working on this right away. And so we sent out a letter to about 100 people who we thought were leaders in, or people doing a lot of endocrine surgery, a lot of thyroid, parathyroid. There were people who were writing about it. People seemed to know them. And we said, we're going to invite you to a meeting, and the meeting is going to take place in Michigan. And this would be the first meeting, and it was extremely successful. Everybody thought that was a terrific meeting, and that this is a society that should go on. But there was a lot of work involved, mainly Norman and I making sure that we had everything set on how this would be settled. And there was an election at that point in time. And Norman was elected the president, and I was elected the secretary-treasurer. And we had to do all the road work to try and get the organization off the ground. We had to have legal things done. We hired Jay Harness, whose family were lawyers. We had them set up the Constitution for the American Association of Endocrine Surgeons. The logo that you see, AAES logo, that was designed by Sumner Brown. The planning for the next meeting, which was in Washington, was taking place. And so it was a very exciting time as what would happen, what would be the future of endocrine surgery, and how we would attract other people from around the world. So the first couple of meetings were extremely important, and each meeting became more and more successful. And we then said that we need to expand this, and we have to decide how this should be expanded. And at the second meeting, we elected Norman Thompson to be the president again. No one in the history of the society will ever be the president again. But the idea behind that was that the organization was so new, and that Norman and I were doing this all along. They said that Norman should definitely be the president. And unfortunately, I was elected the secretary-treasurer for 5 years. But I never regretted that. It's been a wonderful time. No one will ever be the secretary-treasurer that long again. But it was a tremendous experience for me, because I was speaking with people all over the world. They were calling, well, when's your next meeting? How do I get in? And my secretary was more busy with the AAS than with my clinical practice. So that made it very good. So we had a great time, and Norman and I have developed this relationship over the years where we've remained very good friends, mainly because of the AAS, along with many other friends.
Well, that must have been a heck of a letter, because I thought you sent it out to about 100 people. I've heard other people say that, and yet your attendance at that meeting was close to 100 people.
It was very close to that. Very close to that. Very close to that.
Oh, fantastic. And as a secretary, we all know that that's the job that runs this organization. Right. So I'm understanding now why it's so well run as it started, right. Its leadership. Fantastic. Thank you for doing that back so many years ago. What about the progression? Is it sort of what you and Norman expected of this institution? I mean, at this meeting we've got 485 registrants.
I think this is far beyond what we had ever expected. We expected that there'd be a group of core surgeons. As you know, the original way that we tried to bring people in, it was a person recognized as doing endocrine surgery in his community. It wasn't a person that had a fellowship, wasn't a person that had written a lot. It was a person that's recognized as that individual was a person you would go to for these thyroid, parathyroid, and endocrine problems. And so we really started thinking about how we could expand this and make it better. And we found that within the American College of Surgeons, the ear, nose, and throat people were enormous compared to us. They were absolutely enormous, and that we could never compete with them with regard to having influence in the American College of Surgeons. And this started bringing up the idea of fellowships. That we should have fellowships, we should have people specially trained. Now, we did not want to not have ear, nose, and throat people. We have some of the most outstanding people in the world that are in our society, but we wanted to make sure that those individuals that got in were people who were well recognized, written about. They are writing all the time, producing things. And so the bar to get into the American Association of Endocrine Surgeons was set higher for them. And we wanted to make sure that the endocrine surgeons were controlling society, because ear, nose, and throat was considerably bigger, much more powerful in the American College of Surgeons, and we were just a very small organization.
Interesting.